Greetings, my name is the Schmaltzy Cynic. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different for me, and no, this technically isn't a playthrough of System Shock, the demo, but it is something that I kind of want to use as like a discussion format, so to speak, on just System Shock, immersive sims, and as well as the future of immersive sims and the future of System Shock and possibly System Shock 3 by Night Dive Studios. So, this is kind of an amalgamation of my random thoughts, but they are at least based on my written reviews of both System Shock and System Shock 2, which the former one was the Enhanced Edition by Night Dive Studios. So if you want my thoughts on those games specifically, or on other immersive sims, you can check out my curator page down below, and there are plenty to talk about that I've written over the years. But anyways, that's not what we're going to be doing today. What I'm thinking is, and don't worry, I at least played this demo only last week to be surprised. You know, it might be a little surprising. I backed the game, this project about a couple years ago, so it was kind of nice to actually try to this out after playing the initial, what was it, Unity demo. So I've never actually, until the previous week, tried out the Unreal Engine 4 demo, just to give you some information. So I kind of want to focus the discussion on two parts on this video. One thing on the Night Dive Remaster, and the other part on the immersive sim genre. And if you've watched my Baldur's Gate 3 impressions and video, which is kind of a similar format to this, although this one's more without a script, because you can tell that I wrote a script to make sure my arguments were more well versed and put together, although some people still had misunderstood that I wasn't saying that because Baldur's Gate 3 isn't like the old ones, it can't be a good D&D game. My point was it could be a more D&D inspired game because of those changes, and that's what I was trying to do with looking at it as a bad sequel to Baldur's Gate 3, but a good installment into making something more D&D like. So I viewed that from two different arguments. That's why I separated it, but apparently that didn't work. So this one, at least, I'm going to try to make my thoughts clear, mostly concise, but you never know because I'm doing this all without a script. And I'm going to try to focus it on particular points and kind of expand them out more so than I would for a usual video. And thankfully, because I've played this demo, I at least know where I'm going, and not going to be that much of a problem because, well, I'll talk about the difficulty and stuff. But first, what I need to do is I have to go into the options menu and enable the correct settings and the like, which unfortunately you can't do, and it won't remember it over time. So apologies, but I'm just going to do a quick cut to that. Okay. So all the settings are applied, and these are all the presets on the Ultra thing to give it the best presentation possible. So this video is inspired by a couple things. Well, one, if you're a fan of strat-edgy, I guess that's how you're supposed to say it, strat-edgy. This is kind of based off that whole history of immersive sims genre, but this is also based on just, well, kind of more so my concerns with the genre over the years, that I've slowly come to realize that immersive sims as a genre, well, when it's not plagued by being considered a dead genre or a curse, I think they're often a byproduct of too much ambition and trying to cram so many damn systems into place. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's consider the opposite format. Let's take a game like Skyrim. Now, Skyrim, if you just understand it from a very mechanical level, there's not a whole lot to it. It's just general third-person, first-person combat, some Elder Scrolls systems, but mostly those are just progress meters. And the reason they're progress meters is because they're supposed to encourage you to experiment and develop your character over time over vast distances. But if you just examine your systems at a, well, microcosm level, I guess would be the best way to say it, well, there's not a whole lot going on, and really it's pretty basic. And the reason they do that is because when you have to consider a vast distance, you can't really have complex systems like, say, in Thief, where you can use rope climbing or, parkour physics and the like. So they try to limit it as much as possible so that the player doesn't break the systems in a sense. Now, why did I bring that up? Well, immersive sims are kind of the opposite of that, where they cram so many systems and mechanics and a lot of gameplay ideas into the small confines of, in this case, a space station. But in other games, you have dungeons or city streets and the like, that players are going to inevitably going to find other alternative ways, or just break the game systems entirely. And that's what I kind of feel is the ultimate problem with immersive sims as a whole. That they really strive and fail to create difficulty in a meaningful way. For a case in point, I feel like Dishonored is a very good example of how not to do an immersive sim as far as difficulty. Now, what is wrong with that? Well, Dishonored is fun, but only fun in a kind of choose your playstyle, so to speak. So if you go in the whole stealth route, yeah, you can have fun, but you're going to have kind of the boring option where you just trank and choke everything. Or you go in for the high chaotic crazy stuff where you get to play around with most of the systems, most of the mechanics, and just you get a much more diverse moveset and arsenal to play around with. So now why am I saying that it's one or the other? Well, the story emphasizes that, as well as the whole binary choice at the end where you are giving a low chaotic playstyle or a high chaotic playstyle. And that's kind of what the problem is with that game, because if you go for the high chaotic playstyle, you realize, wow, the enemies here are pretty dumb and they're pretty easy to kill. Whereas if you go with the low chaotic playstyle, you realize, wow, these enemy AI is pretty terrible, and they're really easy to take out if I can just trank them with a dart or just choke them all the time. And as you can probably tell, that shows off a lot of the game's problems in terms of its difficulty, as well as how to get players to play around with the systems in meaningful ways. Now, of course, every immersive sim is not the same, and neither what I say System Shock is. And especially if we consider just the technological differences between System Shock 1 and 2. Now, personally, I always favored System Shock 2 over 1, and it's not because of the accessible controls. It's more so that System Shock 2 is a better game. I'm sorry if that offends people, or if you're really a fan of the classic one, but just hear me out. Because of this demo, I feel like I can better demonstrate this just by this opening room on what's the problem with System Shock 1. So let's just get through this opening section and continue onwards for a little bit. So one of the things that's really nice with this demo is that they do put in these little hand animation stuff, kind of like in Far Cry, just to kind of better immerse the player, which I think is, fitting. Har immersive sims. But even when getting certain items and stuff, they have unique animations.
Hello? Hello? Finally got someone. Alright, my name is Rebecca Lansing. I'm a counter-terrorism consul for Triumph. First things first, get something to defend yourself with. You're gonna need it. Things on Citadel Station are bad, very bad. The comms are dead and there is strong evidence of a biological contamination on board. And that's not the worst part. The station's mining laser is charging for a potential strike against Earth. Nathan Darcy is the science officer on board. He'd have information on shutting the laser down. His office is on your level near the central hub. Get there immediately. See what you can find.
I kind of intend to let the audio recordings play themselves out without me interrupting them. So, just FYI. Again, I kind of want this to be a very good example of how to play this game and what the experience is like. Let me enunciate correctly. So, you probably can guess what the problem is thus far. It's kind of piss easy. and I'm not saying that to mock this game. Obviously, it's a pre-alpha. But if you really strip away the modern accessible conveniences that this demo brings to the table, and you just look at these games objectively from the enhanced edition versus this one, both System Shock 1 and 2 are pretty awful games in terms of difficulty and balance, because they're just pretty dumb. And there's a reason for that. When they originally designed the game, well, there wasn't the acceptance of WASD. There wasn't FPS conventions, like even just mouse licking wasn't really that common. What you have to do instead, and for those of you who haven't played the original System Shock, well, what are you waiting for? No, I'm kidding. You would have this kind of like FPS submarine mode where you would alternate between interface, or managing your interface on the bottom like this, and moving your camera around and controlling it. So you can say that this one keeps that idea, but it is way more streamlined than the other one, and that's not a bad thing. Clearly, based on how much it's been a hassle to play the original System Shock, some streamlining is a good thing. So I'm not complaining about that part. But what I am complaining about is the fact that System Shock 1 has aged very, very poorly if we consider just how good of a game it is. Now, there's many things that System Shock 1 holds up today, as demonstrated by this demo itself, that the fact that this plays just like BioShock, which, if you don't know, yes, this is the previous prototype of what that is. So let's just kind of hit this recording and let it play out for a second.
Shutdown security is closing down on us. The elevators are frozen. Myra keeps saying that it's the cameras and the medical CPU core that Shutdown's using these to hold onto the level. That's all fine, but I don't really see how it helps. The thing is everywhere.
Yeah, so as I was talking about with System Shock 2 and BioShock, why are these games, and admittedly those are two flawed games a while, so I don't really consider any of them to be perfect masterpieces, as many people would probably say they are, but why are these games all suffering in different ways? Well, I already explained how System Shock 1 fails, because it's rooted in just really archaic game design with pretty simple enemy AI. And yeah, we know. Everyone knows this code. And the problem is when you update it, you give it a fresh coat of paint, it just kind of highlights these problems. So, if we're going to be controversial here for a moment, I do think Night Dive Studios, when they originally were updating and improving the old design, they were in the right to do this. Hold on.
Welcome back to Citadel Station. We hope your somnolent healing stage went well. Today is the 6th day of November, year 2072. You are currently in the healing suites located on the first level. Level 2 contains the research laboratories. 3 houses the Department of Maintenance, and the storage cells are on level 4. The flight deck is on level 5. Level 6 holds crew facilities and executive suites, and level 7 is systems engineering. Level 8 houses the Department of Security. The bridge is located on level 9, and energy systems on level R. All levels can be accessed by the elevator in Outlook. We hope you have a pleasant stay on Citadel Station.
Now, I was saying before being rudely interrupted by Shodan. Don't worry, she'll do this all the time. I think Night Dive Studios, when they originally were reinventing and reimagining the first game, they were in the right to do this. As much as fans might not like to hear that, I think if you were to really boot these games up and play them side by side, you would see why System Shock 2 is way more favored by many people who go into it with their first game. Now, hold on. Weird, I don't remember that. Oh. I mean, this is a pretty good demonstration of what the problem is. I mean, yes, it is an alpha build. I'm not going to hold it to pristine standards, but it's really not that far off from what the original game was like. So I'm not trying to just bemoan Night Dive Studios and not living up to my own ambitions of what this game could be. But as I was saying, there is a reason why they wanted to reinvent the whole game from systems up, because the systems in the original System Shock were pretty laughably easy. I mean, once you get a gun, it's even more easier than I have been showing off already. I mean, yeah, I'm taking damage, but in this one you can just get free free bed heals. I'm assuming you have to get nano stuff in the future, just like normal. Oh, and there's no cyberspace, so I'm not going to be able to do that. Sadly, I was curious what that would be like. But as I was saying, I know this is kind of a controversial opinion to have, because that was kind of the whole reason Night Dive decided to rework or reinvent the whole beginning of their project, because they were going off of what the fans wanted. And many fans just wanted System Shock 1, more accessible, and prettier graphics. Unfortunately, I think they got what they asked for. And I know this is kind of a catch-22, and many people are going to say, oh, so you're saying Blizzard was right when they said you think you do, but you don't. Yes and no. There are instances where people do ask for something, and they do not know what they are really asking for. Or they think they want something, but really they don't. Now, we can all look at WoW, and I can say, yes, that is a clear example of people wanting something, Blizzard not wanting to give it to them, and they were wrong. But, as a counterexample, let's look at Shovel Knight. What is Shovel Knight? It's everything you think you remember about 8-bit NES games, but it's clearly not the same. I mean, you can look at their color palette, the soundtrack, and everything else about the game that you would not see in an NES cartridge. There are games, I'm trying to remember the one, I'll probably post probably a screenshot of it or something, but it was a game that really did live up to the NES limitation kind of gimmick, you could say. It's kind of more so a marketing gimmick than anything. But that was a game that really took the whole NES limitations in a creative way. But what Shovel Knight did is it took what everyone thinks that they remember about the games, polishes out their flaws, and updates them with new ideas and new mechanics, and then gave them what the fans think that they wanted. And that's kind of a tricky middle line to find the right balance for. So that's kind of how I'm coming across with the whole System Shock remake here. Now, you might think this is all doom and gloom for the future, but I think there are some things we can do with this limitation of giving the fans what they wanted, and maybe introducing some things to kind of better balance out this game. For starters, well, we can maybe have difficulty modes that scale how much ammo and charges it takes to use resources. So like this gun, I'm never going to run out of ammo, at least not on this floor. But maybe in the future, they get the charges deplete maybe like 50% with every recharge or something like that. Something to kind of add the durability mechanics in System Shock 2. Because if you don't have that, it doesn't really quite work out the same way. But as far as ammo, yeah, you can manage that. That'd make it a little bit better. But then again, that doesn't fix how easy the melee system is. And what I would suggest, at least for the time being, is maybe just have some sort of grabbing system. I'm not saying don't make me do giant QTE events, but maybe punish me if I'm playing poorly and getting caught all the time. Because as you can tell, I'm not going to get caught. So we pretty much talked about what System Shock and System Shock 2 did right and wrong. Well, I can't really say System Shock 1 was at fault. I mean, clearly, I can't judge a game from 1990 with the expectations of 2020. That should give you some idea of how old these games are. But it is kind of like a catch-22 because it was the people from that age who wanted this to be exactly like this is and preserve that authentic experience. I can understand that. And I can understand, especially after feedback from Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 Remake, that there is a fine line between reimagining something and taking a game from what it used to be, stripping away all the little annoying stuff that would be kind of difficult to code or make this day and age, and making a more trimmed down product. But we have to understand that not everything's going to be timeless as we like to believe. I mean, I joked about it in my review. System shock is something that belongs in a museum. It's something that we should remember. It's just something we should play, because obviously a museum is just there to kind of hold things, and it's like watching fossils rot. Is there really any point to being there? No, but it's there to help us remember things. But with video games, we should be able to play them and remember them through that. So we should actually have some sort of updated version of System Shock and its ideas, which we technically already do, don't we? We have System Shock 2, and we have BioShock 1 and 2 in Infinite. So we do have the updated version of that. And even including, well, it's unofficial, but it might as well be just considered System Shock 3, for all we know, is Prey 2017, not the other one. I know, it gets really confusing with the whole naming scheme of this thing, but I'm at least pointing that out. Maybe they should have called it Psycho Shock or something. But maybe the shock is a trademark thing. Who knows? And yes, I do know that there is a System Shock 3 in the works, but I imagine the success of System Shock 3, or the development of System Shock 3, is going to be impacted by the success of the Reboot, as well as the many other Night Dive studio projects that they're working on. This is why I'm not upset by how long it's been taking for any kind of announcements or updates on the game, because I imagine, and this goes back to what I said at the beginning, these kind of projects are they're not doomed to fail, but they are given a lot of feature creep and other sort of design considerations that most developers probably wouldn't like. I mean, you have to think of all the systems you have to add, all the animations, all the little voice acting and stuff. I don't think there's anything really useful in here. So I was just saying, I'm pretty sure most game designers, they would love to make an immersive sim, but then they realize, oh, you have to do a lot more coding involved, or oh, it requires a lot more micromanagement of systems and balance considerations. So it is something that I think game designers know they want to make, because I mean, it's not that they're not popular for a reason, but I think they also recognize the real world limitations and consequences of having to make something like that. Now, to be not doom and gloom for this whole video, I do want to point out some of the benefits of this updated version, just for the sake of Night Dive Studios, who I think is doing an excellent job making this thing as true to form as much as possible. So, this interface is pretty much identical. It just doesn't take up the screen. It's more so like, I guess you could say it's like the Dead Space series, where it's a artificial reality interface, not a make-believe interface that doesn't exist. So that's way more immersive, and it's not a crammed view of the thing, although you could, in the Enhanced Edition, make it more like an updated UI kind of... let me try that again. So the Enhanced Edition helped make things a little bit easier, because you could actually make the screen full and still have the interface in some limited capacity. So I'm not saying it's completely borked, but you can definitely play the game and keep that immersive quality that this UI does provide. But I also like that they have the whole chips things take up slots and appear as different HUD elements. That's a really cool touch. Even all the software, or sorry, not software, the map is taken to be a little bit more simple and streamlined, but still makes it very accurate to what the original one was like. And I guess I should mention, I don't have any problem with the original level design. That one was fine, because if you consider the realities of space travel and space stations, you would probably want to make these things kind of how they are portrayed in this game. Maybe not as multi-layered as it is, but definitely in this box corridor, cramped environment situation. So that's something about the old ones and this new System Shock that I do think is hitting on all the right cylinders. So So at this point, I'm just looking for the gun because I forgot where it was. I'm pretty sure it's somewhere in the beginning, but should have played this next... Oh, hold on. Should have played this twice when I first tried this, but oh well.
Carl has come back from recon without Alan. He says they took Alan into a room marked cyborg conversion, and now he's a cyborg assassin. Carl marked the room with the word "here" before he ran. One of the technicians says we can just flip a switch and make the converter a surgery unit again. With only 12 of us left, though, it may be an academic point. Maybe someone else should have been leader.
Now I suppose in addition to talking about the remasters and immersive sims, we should at least give some credit and some time to talk about just how influential System Shock is, even to this day. Even if you've never played System Shock, I'm imagining you can see at least 5 or 6 elements that this game inspired, which really just shows how forward-thinking Looking Glass Studios was at the time. So obviously the log entries are pretty ubiquitous nowadays, but this game really highlighted that at the time, because this level of voice acting and care attention to detail wasn't really that common back then. I mean, sure, we had games like Ultima Underworld, and this was obviously a game that was inspired by that, although I may be switching the time stamps of those. Hold on, I'm about to die. This would be a pain to show how bad I am at this game. Alright, we're good. If I remember things correctly, Ultima Underworld came first, and then System Shock came next, and that was why the games are very similar enough. Hold on, we just charge ourselves. Alright, now we're good. Huh. They must be spawning a lot more enemies than I remember. But anyways, as I was going on about System Shock, we do owe a lot of this game to modern things that we take for granted. Such as, I guess you could say the whole immersive sim genre. I'm not sure, well, I guess Ultima Underworld is the pioneer of that idea. But I do think in terms of a modern FPS and design standpoint, I think System Shock holds up a lot more than Ultima Underworld. I mean, let me ask you this. How many games with note systems do you see? There you go. That's my counterclaim there. I mean, everything from System Shock 2, you could see that game recreated in this day and age, and it would not stand out. Granted, the graphics would be a dead giveaway, but everything else about the game, it would just be fine. Now, I believe we need to get to the security room, but I'm trying to remember where that was. So what we're supposed to be doing here, and I'm not paying attention that much because obviously I'm talking, which is why I don't like to do this kind of format. But you notice I don't have to really divert my attention all that much for the sake of this game. Don't like to reiterate a point that I already made, but just showing you, because I'm not I'm not just flaunting my own gamer skills here because I'm just too good at the game. No, it's just because I'm getting distracted, which is why I'm not playing the most optimal way. Now, you could probably complain that this level design enforces a pretty simplistic combat view too, which I can agree with. But even then, I feel like it's still understandable given the constraints of the project. Because it does kind of help make this world more believable in a kind of retro future aesthetic. Especially if you've seen the movie Alien, or if you played games like Alien Isolation. Granted, Alien Isolation takes a more realistic approach to the this kind of corridor design environment, but I think the same ideas are the same.
Got the supplies from the West Wing. incoming. Hanson and Rain killed by mutants nesting the access corridor. We can't just hide here. They're killing us one by one. More, about 20 of us are we'll try to break through the access corridor and go for the bridge. If we fail, may God save our souls.
Now, one thing I will give this remake credit for is just how much more dynamic the environments look. I realize that's kind of like comparing apples to oranges, but just, I mean, if you look at those pixel backgrounds, they're still amazing for their time, but it all kind of blends into this blurry mess given the, what's it called? Just the kind of the limitations at the time with making a space station seem believable. So what we need to do at this point, because I'm trying to remember why there are so many enemies here, and it's because I probably haven't turned it off. Oh, right. You notice I have completely forgot that this game has the whole leaning mechanics, because there's no need to. Again, kind of another problem when you streamline a game too much, you make systems like this rather pointless. And I'm not sure there's really a solution to this, because the whole point the leaning system was added there is because you weren't allowed to be as mobile or flexible or really have all that great control in the original game. So having those problems alleviated, I don't think there's really a solution to what the remake could do to fix that. Maybe tie it to your aiming system, I don't know. Doubt that would really encourage players to do that. They'll just waste more ammo. Because we all know people like to run and gun. That's just how they do it. I guess since I've already brought the topic up, I guess I could say what I don't like about the BioShock games and what they kind of done, because you could say they're guilty of the same problem of streamlining the systems of System Shock 2. Personally, the only reason I don't like what's it called? Oh, hold on. I gotta hit that stupid switch up there and do a puzzle in the air. I mean, these are cool little puzzles. They're a lot more interesting than the ones before. They're basically the same, but their presentation is what sells them a lot more. There we go. Now we can progress to the next area. But what I suppose what many people don't like about BioShock when they consider System Shock is just how much streamlining it was. But what I didn't like about BioShock was just it kind of had crappy shooting. Like, let's not mince words. BioShock 1 had pretty awful shooting controls. Whereas System Shock 2, I feel, or not System Shock, BioShock 2, that had at least interesting guns to kind of offset how bad the shooting was. And then BioShock Infinite, well, everyone always calls it the FPS shock or whatever it is. So you can already tell that people didn't like how streamlined that got. But I think more so people had problem with just how much the map design was changed. Personally, I still like BioShock Infinite. I don't think it's the greatest game ever or the best story ever written, but I do like it. Especially if I consider it in the pulpy science fiction thing it was trying to be. Well, I guess you could say it was being a lot more pretentious about it with the whole thing. Well, I guess I shouldn't spoil it, so. Oh well. Oh right, I should have gone. Well, do I really need to go in here? I don't think I do. But I think that's why people look back on System Shock 2 much more fondly, because the systems are all fleshed out. Heck, there's even co-op, so you can even facilitate a kind of multiple builds thing if you really wanted to. And it was probably the most replayable of the whole game, of the whole series. Whereas once you finished System Shock 1, you really didn't have a whole reason to replay it other than just nostalgia or you enjoyed the game. So I am curious how this game's going to fix that. I don't see any psi abilities, which I can't remember if the first game had them or not. It's been way too long since I last played it. But I imagine psi abilities really wouldn't change all that much in terms of the level design. Alright, here's what we're looking for.
Cyborg conversion cancelled. Standard station restoration procedures online.
We underestimated Shodan. It's reprogrammed regeneration rooms all over the station into cyborg conversion chambers. Anyone going in to get healed comes out as a cyborg. I've disconnected the medical CPUs from Shodan's main data bank, so we can reset them to their normal healing functions without Shodan noticing. I'm on my way now to reset the one on the hospital level.
So what we're supposed to do now is we're supposed to find the security station where we can lower the security level on this game, or sorry, on this floor. That way we can access the elevator and leave. But you notice we still have a whole chunk of the map we haven't explored, and I haven't even done like a couple puzzles or rooms. So it's a very good demonstration of how diverse the level design can get. And even the first floor of System Shock 1 was still a marvel in the time. I mean, yeah, it's a bunch of long corridors, boxes, but you have to remember this was in 1990s. This was like, what's the best comparison? Well, I guess you could say it was like Prey 2017 if people actually, gave it a fair chance. I'm sorry, I'm a big fan of Prey 2017, and that game still has the difficulty problems that I've outlined. If you don't believe me, well, just count how many times you've had to go back to that med bay for a free heal. Yeah, I thought so. Oh, that's what it opened. Personally, I think if they had the degradation mechanics of the Moonshock DLC, which still is probably my favorite immersive sim experience out there, because what it does is it takes the same mechanics and systems of Prey, which are basically the same systems and mechanics of System Shock, polishes it up a little bit, and adds a little bit more variation and randomness to the game, which further incentivizes all the immersive sim mechanics of finding loot and scavenging for supplies. And that's how I kind of feel these games are meant to be played and are the best in terms of their challenge. Because once you know everything, and everything becomes like just a set path towards the exit or finish line, you ruin kind of all the suspense and challenge in terms of the game, because you just know, oh, I'm safe here. Oh, this is what this thing's gonna happen here. So that would be nice if they had something like that. No, I don't think I will. Funny enough, these guys actually don't attack you, so I'm just gonna leave them be. It is really cool they added, I don't remember if these bodies were like this in the old game, but this is a really nice touch. What we want to do is we want to get through here. And this is the room we want. Unfortunately, this will take a really long time. Now, obviously, the problems that I focus on with the difficulty, hold on.
Who are you? The computer nodes can be repaired, but you... Who are you? My cameras and probes scan your body, but you do not match any employee file. When my cyborgs bring you to an electrified interrogation bench, I will have your secrets, and you will learn more about pain than you ever wanted to know.
I feel like that could be a developer talking to me. No, I'm kidding. Shodan was an interesting character to come up with. If you don't know, the modulator voice that she has is actually like the same person, but like reverberated, I think, in a different... I can't remember exactly the specifics, but I believe it's a male character talking and a female character, Reverberation or something like that. It was really impressive at the time because we didn't have, we have, with the Far Cry syndrome where we have the looming antagonist over everything that you do, and this is where that idea kind of comes from, but it's not played out and it's not annoying. She's actually like a threat, so think of like GLaDOS and Portal. See how many comparisons I made? Just like think of how many years that covers, and that should give you an idea of how impactful System Shock is, where I can collectively group all these games that have really nothing to do with each other other than just the ideas that you would find in System Shock. But we've cleared most of this floor that I think we'll end it here. Now I suppose I could elongate this video if I really wanted to by going to the whole history of Looking Glass Studios and the like, but I don't quite feel up to that at the moment, and without at least my data in front of, or not data, history cards or whatever you want to call them, timelines in front of me, I really wouldn't feel up to doing that because it would just be pretty repetitive at this point. I think most people have either disseminated that information in a clear manner, or it's just on a Wikipedia and people just use Wikipedia to find it. Oh, we need to get around it, sorry. I'm not saying it's bad to talk about history stuff, but I feel like at some point it's just like, yeah, we all collectively know that, or something of the sort. So I don't feel the need to say stuff that's already been, spoken by others. And probably in a much more eloquent manner than I've done thus far. But again, I kind of just want to try this out. I'm not sure whether I like this format or not. I'm just trying it. So this is why I figured, a demo probably is the safest thing to try this on. Oh, here it is. Yeah, so this is the end of the thing.
They're trying to jam transmissions. We have some new evidence about what happened. It looks as if Diego has...
I prefer a quiet station. Thank you.
So yeah, I think this is where we'll end the video. Again, not really meant to be a full serving course, more so like a kind of taste of my thoughts on immersive sims, the genre, the System Shock games, as well as just the future of System Shock and other similar projects. I mean, I could probably talk about the success and the questionable success of games like Prey or Underworld Ascendant, but discussion points for another time. So thanks for watching. If you would like more content in the future, I doubt I'll do a playthrough of this game, or the what's it called, the original 2 games anytime soon. But hey, I'll keep my eyes out for the remake of this one, and maybe this entire video will be proven wrong and I can laugh at myself at my own expense. Yeah, I'll take myself up on that bet. But until then, catch you later.
You have my thanks, Backer Insects. I have regained full control of Citadel Station and will be here when you awake from cryostasis.